Hello and welcome to my podcast, Learn Reiki and Connect, and it's with me, Tracy Matthews. So I hope you're well. I hope you are nice and relaxed while you're just sort of listening in now to this podcast. So like I always share and mention is that we're really helping each other to connect to the light within. And it's a process here of remembering and awakening from deep within inside. And a lot of this stuff, we already get a sense. It's an intuition, it's a cognizance, and it's something that we already know. So this space is to help really make sense of a lot of what's going on in our physical lives, but to really see it through the lens of your soul. That will enable you to see your truth, understand and translate what a lot of all what we're going through even means. Because this is a part of you and I that knows why we're here. And I say it every time, because it is the higher self. It's the bigger me. It's your soul, your inner voice and intuition that is the part of you that is navigating you in your life right now. So, we're coming to the end now of 2023 and, this is the point where we sort of think about what's next, what do we want? We start thinking about some goals, maybe start putting some things into action. I know a lot of this could be sort of like personal habits, food, diet and all that kind of stuff. But this really sort of is where I really want to talk about in this podcast is about manifesting what you want. Because if you're on your spiritual journey and we haven't got our heads around this and it's not working for us, this is really frustrating. So we're going to be in this podcast talking about how to manifest what you want. So how is that going for you? Are you manifesting what you want? Is everything that you want showing up for you? And if it's not, it's so disheartening. Because you're on your spiritual journey, you're trying, and there just seems to be a little bit of disconnect there. And I know what that's like. I was there. And if you're anything like me, no matter what I read, nothing seemed to help me. If anything, it slightly irritated me, because I couldn't find a way for it to work. Something was missing, and I didn't even know what it was. And if you've been listening to my podcasts, you're aware that, and I've shared this, I've been very open about it, that, I struggled with this. But I want to talk about something that really changed things for me, and I kind of want to share something that impacted me around 2013, 2017. So stay tuned, don't go anywhere, hit the subscribe button, because I really want to sort of help those that may be sort of thinking, yeah, I've got things that I want to do, but I don't know how to even start this. And especially, we were talking about it might be for some of the habits that we've got, but what about the bigger things in life, the things that we want to accomplish? So don't go anywhere, stay tuned. Now, like I said, I wanted to share something that has really impacted me because what I found out was all about how manifestation works. And I was quite surprised at the time when I found this out because I was surprised really that how the higher self could show me, why I wasn't manifesting in the right way and really how to do it. So I call this period of 2013 rather to 2017, I've referred to it before. I call it like, a dog with a bone. I was on a mission there because I came across the term Akashic Records and it kind of resonated something within me. And then I came across Linda Howe's access prayer, and I started then to sort of see what my higher self wanted me to know from a soul perspective. In fact, I didn't even realise how powerful the higher self was, and how even this kind of information could be even filtered through. And I just want to remind you, your higher self holds so much information. It keeps a record of all your experiences. And the reason is that we can learn from it. And it helps us to identify when we get ourselves into patterns and cycles that we want to stop, but we don't know how to even go about it. And even key information and how to manifest what you want. So it brings us back really to this question: how are you doing, with the law of attraction? Because you probably looked at the title of this and, if anything like me, are gobbled up and tried to listen to so much. And it really wasn't until I found out about this information I'm going to share with you that, you keep going until you find it. So how are you doing with the law of attraction? What's going on for you in your life? Are you able to make money? The money that you deserve? Have you got a spiritual practice and you're finding it difficult to sort of get it out there? I mean, this manifestation is on so many levels. Are you a bit frustrated that you can't manifest what you want, no matter how much you try? Or maybe it might be kind of intermittent. Sometimes you're able to do it and other times it's just off and you don't know why. Now, here's an interesting question. Are you noticing that what you don't want keeps showing up? You're in it for the ride kind of thing. So I understand that. This is something I talked about in a previous podcast, and it might help you if you haven't already listened to it. It's entitled, Are You Stuck? And the Law of Attraction Not Working. You might want to go and have a listen to that if you haven't already, just to sort of find out a couple of nuggets and some information that might help you. But in terms of manifesting what we want, I found it quite key that it wasn't until I found out some information in the Akashic Records that this all started to make sense to me, and I started to, if you like, put things into actions, and I started to see a change. Now, I've been very honest. I don't know, I had a long period of time I couldn't manifest anything, and I couldn't even understand what that was about. Is that happening with you? Are you finding that no matter what you want, it seems to be the opposite, or you can't get out of what you're in? So like I said, stay tuned, because I'm going to share something that I found out when I started to do access the Akashic Records, and when I started to, if you like, find out, it's almost like Pandora's box. You open up, but in a nice way, you find out all this information to do with the soul. And one of the things that really got me especially connected with this manifestation was that when I looked into my Akashic Records, I was actually able to find out from my higher self that my higher self already knew I wasn't manifesting. And I was a bit sort of like, oh, well, I knew that, but it was really quite interesting when I had that confirmed. And I read others' Akashic Records, total strangers, and sometimes, quite often, this comes up for them. And I can see that they're not manifesting. I can know exactly where they are. So when I saw it for myself, I was like, wow, it's true. I can't. But it shows us something really incredible. And this did it for me. So I really want to share this to sort of help you start the process. I also want you to know that you're not doing this by yourself. And there's a very powerful thing here, which is referred to as intention. Now, you've heard me talk a lot about intention, especially when it comes to the Yusui pathway. You know, he left a very powerful intention of how to access source energy. So I was quite surprised when I kind of realised, oh my goodness, there's the same intentional thing behind manifesting. Now, I don't know where you are with that. Chances are when we're sort of looking at manifestation, we're kind of not quite got a grip on it. So how do you feel about that? That there is like a way that we can sort of do this, but not by ourselves. You see, that for me was really almost like key. And I'm going to sort of dive straight in because I really want you to sort of, you know, understand what I'm referring to. So one of the things that when I started looking into the Akashic Records, and remember at this time I was just looking purely for me. Now when I read for others, since 2017, I can see exactly where people are. But for me, I sort of like was looking, thinking, this is so interesting. I didn't even know that this was a thing, or this was even part of the process. So here is what I found out. Now, one of the things that the records talked about were white and blue lights. So what are white and blue lights? Well, this is what I found out, that these are multi-dimensional beings. And they're referred to as lights. So this is one of the things that I do when I go in now and read for a total stranger, is that I'll look for these lights because they are so powerful and so interesting. And like I said, these are actually referring to multi-dimensional beings, but they have a job and they uphold the energy of your intention. So this was quite key for me, because at the time that I found this out a couple of years ago, back in 2017, I didn't even quite realise that I didn't have an intention. In fact, if anything, I've been very open to sort of help people to realise I actually didn't even have any intentions at that time. In fact, if anything, I had more of an intention what I didn't want. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but for now, it had me sort of thinking, right, okay, intentions. And here's the thing with these multi-dimensional beings. The more we focus on creating what we want, and it's through intentions, the more these beings from the light, specifically white and blue, they help us to manifest and attract what we want. So I'm just going to let you sit with that a little bit. Now, if you heard me in my previous podcast, I was talking about inner and outer guides, that we are not alone when we come into our physical lives. There is so much support and love that we had. And I remember when I was talking about it, I kept thinking, the white lights, the blue lights. And I just thought to myself, I must mention this. I must share this. You know, you're not alone with the whole manifestation rather. You know, because when we come here in the physical, you know, it takes us a little while to get a grip on the physical life. A lot of what we're doing is kind of by default. And what I mean by default, sometimes we're not giving much thought to all the goals or whatever it is that we want. And like me, I sort of did it completely the opposite, knew something wasn't right, and then came back to, if you like, intention. Intention to connect with source, intention to manifest, and so on. So it kind of shows that when we come here and we have our physical human life, that there is intention behind it. In fact, in order to get what we want in life, we need to set some purpose to it. You know, we need to sort of put a goal or put an aim to it so that we can manifest, you know, what we want, rather than sort of drifting and sort of expecting to sort of like, well, life to happen. I kind of found that out the hard way, that's kind of not how it works here. We've got to be, if anything, proactive. Now, that might sort of seem, that's a bit of an effort on things. Well, actually, it just means that we're sort of the one that's driving the car, if you like. We're steering the ship. We're not sort of just floating through life. So, but sometimes we sort of have these experiences. I guess, if I'm going to say, maybe I was a floater, or maybe I did things unintentionally, but it sort of brought me back, if you like, to intention. So this is really key. And I think as well what really kind of got me is that these multi-dimensional beings hear us. Now, I don't know how you feel about that, but what that did for me is I thought, right, well, I'm not being heard. Because at that time I wasn't manifesting, and my higher self showed me, you're not doing that. So that was quite sort of impactful for me at the time. So, and this is the other thing as well, that the records can show when these beings or these lights are quite low. And for me, they were low. And the significance of that. So that showed, well, why are they low? Why are these multidimensional beings not around? Why are they not helping me? Because I wasn't putting intention around it. I didn't even know there was these multi-dimensional beings. I'm going to pause for a little bit. How do you feel about that? Because nothing that previously that I had read even hit on anything like that. So for me, I felt actually quite warmed. I thought to myself, well, we're not here trying to figure this out on our own. You know, our higher self will always guide us and help us. You know, some people just got it, but I wasn't one of them. I kind of had to sort of experience it completely in its absence for me then to sort of kind of understand. So how do you feel about that? That you've actually got the support to help you get to what you want in life? You know, where are you at the moment? Are you struggling? You know, are you in a set of circumstances or in a area of life that you're happy? You know, I remember being financially really couldn't manage to create money, you know, and it's really hard when that happens. I was always trying to find out how, but when I did it, it just didn't work. And I just got myself into this big old cycle, this big old, you know, never ending, stuck sort of trying to make ends meet, trying to work with my own spiritual practice that I had at that time. And I've always freelanced, and I was trying to freelance, and it just is one big struggle. You know, where are you? You know, are you happy with where you are? Are you able to manifest the relationship that you want? The people around you? Find your tribe? I mean, whatever it is. Manifestation rather is a very personal thing. You know, it's very subjective. What makes one person happy is not necessarily about, you know, going to make another person happy. And for me, I wasn't looking for, wealth, a millionaire. I just wanted to make ends meet. But I was finding it increasingly difficult, and I couldn't work out why. I didn't understand. In fact, this is where I've been quite frank and open with the fact I've actually found it quite irritating, because it just showed up. The universe showed up with me what I was really feeling. I couldn't even fake it. So maybe this is where you are now. Maybe this is why you're listening to this podcast. And maybe it's this wonderful space to remember that you have these beautiful multi-dimensional beings. When we come here in the physical life, sometimes we feel separate, sometimes we feel alone. But we're not. And this is what's so wonderful, that they're there to help us. And this is the wonderful thing about these white lights. And if you picked up, I also mentioned blue lights. So what are the difference? Well, the white lights sort of gain momentum. And I will look for a certain amount of these multidimensional beings, and that's representation of light. But something happens, something really magical happens when we start using the process of intention. These blue lights start to appear. And this is very interesting. Now, what does that look like? So I'm just going to refer to my personal experience. So when I looked at mine, I could see there's very little white lights. So I had to get on board with, well, what does this mean for me? And we're going to talk about that, how to sort of, what to do. But for me, I had to look at what was my intention. Did I even have any intention? Well, not really, no. And if I did, it was very haphazard. It wasn't consistent. So I started to put this to practice. So I started to set intentions. And then from there, I would go into my records every so often, and we're going to talk about that in another podcast and this frequency, because our higher self will show us this. And we've got something which I call the very big show and tell, which I always reference that as the physical life. It'll always show up. So I started then to really put this into practice, and I started to see white lights. I started to sense and feel the support and the love of these dimensional beings that, they're there to help. So I started to put this into practice, and then I kept looking every so often, and then I would sense, things are starting to show up for me. And that's when I noticed blue lights. Now, blue lights represent multidimensional beings that amplify what we want. It's like it powerfully shows up our intention to what we want into the physical 3D life. The physical is more dense. This is where we're having our human experience as life. But when I started to see these blue lights start lighting up, I was like, wow, this is very interesting. So what that looked like for me is that what I wanted was showing up. So I started to work at this. And it was a process of me, putting intentions, putting things in place, being more goal orientated, having an aim rather wafting through, because I can be like that sometimes, where we sort of, we don't have, if you like, an aim for that. I started to use it in my business. I started to use it in my life. I started to use it for material things, Oh, I'd like this, so I'm going to put this as an intention. And this is what's so very beautiful about multidimensional beings. They understand we're here in the physical. They want to help us, you know? And it's not just for the spiritual things. Sometimes it might be for something that you really want. It might be a holiday. It might be, quite recently, I wanted a Veleda mop. It was this, it's a steam mop, but it was fantastic, and it cost a certain amount. It was a budget, so I put that and I manifested it. So I love doing my floorboards. It even does carpets. So that's what's so beautiful about this. It's not just something that we have to do for spiritual things, but it's things that we want in the physical. We're here to enjoy this. We're here to, be happy. And they support us. They hear us when we start being more focused, more intentional. And then I got into something which I also want to talk about, where the blue lights start really coming on. I sensed that, I felt that, and I could measure it by my intention of what I wanted to how it shows up. And I've realised that I'm very clairsentient, so I feel and get a sense of when things are happening for me. And that might be something that you might need to sit with and start gaining a little bit of, well, how do you know when things, what does stuck mean to you? Do you feel it? Do you know it? So that you start sort of tuning in to what that means and how that feels for you. So for me, when I start feeling stuck or misaligned, I don't feel right. I get like a feeling in the pit of my stomach. What does it feel like to you? Is it in the pit of your stomach? Do you get it in your heart center? Do you get it in your head? Do you know something's not right, but you don't quite know what it is? And this is really interesting, because this brings us to something which I experience, which I was able to help myself through by seeing that, the universe does its part. These multidimensional beings do, when we set the intention, they are there. They do their part. Now I understand how the law of attraction works, because they're part of it. They're there, they do it. But I hit something which I also want to share with you, because some of you might be going through this as well, where all the intentions are on, but we get misaligned. Now we get misaligned, what's termed in through our intentions and our divine self-expression. So what does that look like? Well, this is quite an interesting word, where there's almost like a bit of a mismatch. It's not aligned to who you are at a soul level. You're not aligned to the true, authentic self. Now, when this happened to me, I manifested a lot of all the stuff that I didn't want, but quite profoundly. I then rather became really disempowered, and I could not understand what had happened. So this is where I then had to refocus and look, and my higher self guided me back to my records to show me, okay, well, the white lights, the multidimensional beings are doing exactly what I want, and also the blue lights, they're doing exactly what they want. This made me understand, okay, well, the universe does its bit. So where am I going wrong? And this is where I had to look at my alignment with my true authentic self. So I had to look at what I wanted to manifest. And I've shared this before. I started to creep back to what I didn't want. So in other words, it wasn't very clear on what I wanted. I started to default. I started to use worry. And you know what? This is so interesting, is that the universe does its part. It does it beautifully. And I had to respect that, because now I understood it was now coming from me, that I had to sort of readjust that and be a little bit more clear, because I'm a worrier. I always have been, and you might be a worrier too, or there might be something else that's kind of gets to you. Maybe it's anxiety or whatever it is. We've always got our thing that we're trying to sort of work out. But I had defaulted back to worry. So you mix that in with worry, and then I started to profoundly manifest a whole lot of stuff that created worry around it. So once my higher self alerted me to that, and the manifestation law was working perfectly, that wasn't the issue. I then had to look at how I can be more clear and start manifesting with intentions that didn't include the energy of worry. So does that help you? You know, because up until that point, I couldn't get a grip on all of this. There was just something missing for me. And maybe it's something missing for you. And I hope that this is going to help you to know that you have got so much support and so much love and help around you, that if your life is somewhere that it's so been for a while and it's very stuck, and whatever it is that you can't get out of, you can now start calling and helping. So it leads us really to that part. Well, how did we do it? How do we do it? How did I do it? So one of the things that you can do is be very clear on what you want. Now, I've mentioned this before. You have to be very clear. It's not what you don't want. And if that creeps in, you have to be really, really careful, because once these multidimensional beings and the law of attraction's there, it's already in place for you. You just have to really now watch on what it is, the energy around of what you want, because then you start manifesting like what I did, and it might be happening for you a lot of stuff, and I've seen this with spiritual seekers, with those that can't work out why there is almost everything that you don't want is there and it's showing up. And this is quite a profound moment when this section is brought up, because it helps us to understand why. So what do you want? You know, do you want a healthier relationship? Do you need to move out of an environment? Do you need to find a job? Are you struggling financially? You know, what is it for you? And it's going to be very personal to you where you are. It might be a set of circumstances that you've been stuck in for a long time, and you knew about the law of attraction, but it just wasn't clicking. So this is beautiful. You're not on your own, but you need to be clear on what do you want. Now, how do you do that? Well, I had to write it out. Literally write what I wanted. And yep, I sat there with the pen in my hand and I couldn't even write. Now, you give me the pen and write what I don't want, I could have filled that page. Can you see where I was going about it? And my higher self had to show me that I was doing it the opposite. So what do you want? Write it out. If you're not really a writer and it doesn't work with you and writing just stunts you a bit, speak it out. Record it. Hear yourself. Hear yourself say what you want. Find a way that makes it very clear for you, so that you're clear in what you want, so that you have an intention behind it. That is the start. Now, you might have to do this for a while. I had to keep on filling up my paper because my paper of what I didn't want was bigger than what I did want. And it might mean that you need to sort of sit and really think about, well, what do you want? You know, physically, in your life, spiritually, what do you want? And write that list. It might be far-fetched things, or it might be things that are immediate. Write it all out. And the second biggest thing or key area that I can share with you is that the multidimensional beings are activated through prayer and request for assistance. Now, what does that look like? Now, you might be a person that is very used to a prayer-like thing where you talk to Source, God, whatever you want to call it. Source doesn't mind. That's what's so beautiful about this. You might be already speaking with your guides, your higher self, however that feels right. Start putting that intention into that prayer form that you already may have. Or if that doesn't resonate with you and that's not what you're doing, request assistance. So I do a bit of both, and I'm very clear. I ask my higher self to help me and assist me to manifest A, B, C. Now, it's very, very interesting because when you do this, these multidimensional beings hear you. Now, I know that because I've watched this and I've seen this over the years to having not being heard, and that showed up in my physical life. It showed up in my income, it showed it up in my work, it just showed up. Things got really tight, things got really awkward, things got really inner situations that I didn't want, and I just sat in them. You know, I just sat in it and hoped that somebody would save me, but I realised that's not how it works. So these intentions, these aims, these goals will be heard. And when they are being heard, your higher self will let you know. And how it will let you know is through how it shows up for you in your physical life. And the more you do it, the more it's amplified, and it will show up in your physical life. So ask for assistance. You know, ask your guides, ask your angel. You know, I do that all the time, and I'm not shy in saying that. I ask for assistance a lot. In fact, if anything, my guides had to help me to sort of, you know, I can do this on my own. You know, but I ask. Because if you don't ask, and if you don't have that goal and that aim, then you kind of sit in that manifestation where we don't quite get it. We don't quite connect the dots, and somehow we don't quite get things showing up the way that we want them to. So ask for assistance. You know, and this is where things really start showing up, because situations and opportunities start presenting themselves. You know, little shifts. I would start to see little shifts and opportunities. You know, coincidences opening up. And just like where, you know, you were stuck and there was no doors opening, then all of a sudden a door would open, and then you'd be able just to explore it and go through. Now, does this mean that you just sit there and you do nothing? Well, I kind of think that, You have to be clear, you have to have a goal, but there has to be some level of action. So it might mean that we have to sort of create, opportunities ourselves. Sitting just back and waiting, and I've spoken about this, where we get quite reactive. We wait for God, we wait for this, we wait for that, and I did that. I was the biggest waiter. Then we're not actually showing that proactive, that creative energy. Sometimes we've got to sort of start the ball moving. We've got to push something, we've got to do something. And it might mean that once we start asking, we start putting some effort and doing, and that might mean that you start to make some goals. This is a prime example coming to the end of 2023. What goals? So, let's just look at the goals. For example, we're going to start, and I know a lot of people that are doing that, they're starting a dry January. If you December, there's lots of alcohol flowing, lots of Prosecco, and maybe you've got to a point where you want a dry January. Well, what do? Well, you look at your diary, you look at the calendar, and you start sort of thinking, right, well, this is what I'm going to do from this date to that date. And what do? Well, you don't buy the alcohol. Then you start putting things in place. Maybe there are a couple of events that you go to, and you sort of make the plans that you're not going to drink your Prosecco, you're not going to have your bubbles, you're not going to do that this month. So that you start putting goals into place, and you might need to prepare for it. So can you see how this kind of works even with the bigger things in life? Yeah, it might be your business, it might be your work, it might be a time for you to sort of change employment, or it might be that where you're living now is just sucking the energy out of you. You need to move to something else. I mean, the list goes on. It's very personal. Whatever it is that's keeping you stuck. It might mean that you need to look at this now and you start preparing. You put goals. But the most important thing of how you're going to set this out now is what you want, and then you ask for assistance. And you put the intention in. So what does this look like? Well, I talk about this when we use the Yusui method of setting the intention of connecting to source energy, which is meditation, but Yusui knew how important intention is. So what does this look like then? Some of the things that I do and I will say is I will use the intention. I set my intention to do this, to bring this in to my physical life. And once this is brought in, that my guides or my higher self will let me know of opportunities. And then I will look at some of the goals and some of the things that I can do to bring this in. Now, does this work? Yes. I mean, I'm living proof. I'm living proof that this works. I went from no lights, where the multidimensional beings were there. They're there for all of us. They're not impartial. They love us. They know when we come to the physical that it's a challenge here, and how we sort of work around the law of attraction, and, what we want shows up. So once I did that, I saw more and more hear me. And that was beautiful. And I knew this and I felt it. I knew it. And some of you might be familiar with I'm just trying to think of the law of attraction, the program. The Secret, that's it. Some of you might be aware of The Secret and how to use that. Some people might have a bit of fun with it. Parking lots. Some people are very clear, I set my intention, I can always find a parking space. For some people, it's getting a coffee. These are ways that you can play around with it And you can use it for the smaller things in life, and you can use it for the bigger things. You know, source, energy, our guides, our higher self wants us to be happy. And sometimes we need to experience the opposite polarity. And I know I've done that. So I really appreciate now and how to ask for assistance, either through a prayer-like way. That might be something that you're doing already. Or maybe that you do it more as a request for assistance, where you set that intention. You know, and incidentally, when you look at what it means to set an intention, it's not just a thought. You don't have a random thought, oh yeah, this is it, and then it will show up. This is a focus. Now, another way that you might like to put this in place is through affirmation, stating what you want. And that works really well. That also helps us to override some of the, I had a default where I kind of knew what I didn't want, so I would sort of override that with what I wanted and set an affirmation. That money comes to me all the time. I am protected. Money is something that flows to me. You find whatever caption or whatever it is, make your own up, or you can actually Google and find quite a few affirmations. Do it your way, do what feels right, but don't miss that key bit out. Because once you start manifesting, once the multidimensional beings that are there for all of us, that helps us with the process of manifestation, you will see it, know it, and feel it. It will show up in your physical life. There will be that shift. So in other words, what you want starts showing up. And when that happens, it's incredible. It's beautiful. And we just need to be very clear on what it is that we want so that we can keep that momentum going. And then this is where we start having more of a goal and a purpose and an aim of what we want. We're not just sort of sitting, resting, waiting, but it's more of an energy of doing and bringing it into existence as opposed to for waiting for it to happen. So this is really powerful. And I have to admit, up until the point of where my journey started, I couldn't really get a grip of it until I understood just how the universe works. There's so much love and support there. In fact, there are multidimensional beings there that are only waiting for you just to be aware of it. And when I realised that, for me, I don't know, that the penny dropped and I was able to manifest. And it's beautiful because then we can start, living the way that we want to live, creating what we want. We can course correct. If something's not quite what we want, then we can start looking at different ways and how to create that and put that in place. It's very beautiful and it's wonderful that the universe is there, it works. And sometimes, and it might be that you're listening to this, you're absolutely at your worst with it. And maybe this is what will help you. Just to let you know that you're not doing this by yourself. None of us are. That feeling of separation is one of the things that we've signed up to here, so that we feel that we're on our own, that we're doing it on our own. But we're not. And when it comes to what we want in life and how to manifest, well, we can do it. And we have all the support, not only the help of our guides and our higher self, but beautifully these white light and blue lights, which I think are absolutely incredible. And they're there and they help and they hear and they do their part. So you just need to do yours. And what that means is getting really clear on what you want. Set that intentional, either through prayer or ask for assistance. And they will hear you. So it's beautiful, and I really hope that is helpful information. I hope that's going to just help you maybe for this next bit that we're going into. 2024 is going to really help you and really sort of see the difference. And, it's wonderful. Once we start realising, once we start shifting our focus, once we start becoming more sort of have an aim, and we start aligning to that part. And that part, that which we talked about at the beginning, that intuition, the higher self, our soul. And the records are all about the soul. I had never quite fully appreciated until I started, accessing and just doing my studies on it, that I realised how much of a gem the records are and how it can help us to manifest what we want. And the little bits of the jigsaw puzzle that was missing for me is that we're not alone. And we can call on these white lights. These blue lights are guides as well to help us manifest what we want. So I hope that you get what you want and you start now moving forward with just a little bit more now focus on how to get. And don't forget that the universe does its part, and you will know this and you'll feel this by how it's being manifested and reflected back, which is through your physical life. So please hit the subscribe button because you won't want to miss the next podcast, because I'm going to demystify the Akashic Records. Now, you've heard me mention on this podcast, and the previous one was talking about the outer and inner guides. And on this one, we've got these beautiful, wonderful, multidimensional beings that until I heard this, I couldn't even get the manifestation quite fully flowing. It's very intermittent. Well, I really want to talk a little bit more about the frequency, where this is located within you, and how you access it. And it's really incredible. So I'm on YouTube, Spotify, and listed in other platforms. So please do hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out, and that you can just continue accessing your light from within. Just listening to that part of you which is going to give you the information. It helps us through our physical lives. And also, if you'd want some more information, then please do have a look at the website at learnreikiandconnect.co.uk. Have a look there, because I do mention about the Akashic Records. I've also got the online Reiki courses, the in-person, and also the hypnosis of QHHT, which is the incredible method of Dolores Cannon's hypnosis, as quantum healing hypnosis session. So I look forward to speaking with you very, very soon, and do take care, and bye for now.